The stall door creaked open just as she stepped in front of the mirror. She froze, caught mid-twirl, the hem of her dress swaying slightly as if even the fabric hadn't expected an audience. Her phone was in her hand, camera open, cheeks flushed with a kind of shaky excitement. She had come in early, before the rush, the bathroom lighting was harsh, but she didn't care. This was her moment. The dress was soft gold, cinched at the waist, with fluttered sleeves that reminded her of something regal. She had saved for months, scrolling for hours to find it on clearance. When the box came, she opened it with trembling hands. She thought she looked beautiful. Not perfect, but beautiful. The girl in the stall didn't say anything at first, just snickered. Not loud, not theatrical, just enough, just sharp enough to pierce. Another girl followed in behind her, and the sound echoed again. Snickering, whispers. She's really wearing that? The words weren't even directed at her. They were tossed into the room like crumbs, expecting others to pick them up and laugh too. She stood there frozen, her phone still in hand. She didn't turn, she didn't speak, her eyes locked on her own reflection as the voices sharpened. I swear, who let her think she could pull that off? She's too ugly for prom. It wasn't screamed, it didn't need to be. Whispered cruelty often cuts deeper than shouting ever could. She blinked once. Her image in the mirror stared back the same girl, but no longer glowing. She didn't run. She didn't throw the dress in the trash. She didn't scream or ask why. She simply turned off her phone, pulled the dress back over her head, folded it neatly into her bag, and walked out of the bathroom with her shoulders straight. She didn't cry in the hallway. She didn't cry in the Uber. But when she got home, she sat on the floor of her bedroom, the dress still folded beside her, and stared at the wall for what felt like an hour. The photos she had taken earlier, the ones where she was smiling, where her eyes were still bright, she deleted those first. Then she deleted the backups. Then the saved Instagram drafts. She wasn't sure why she felt so stupid. She knew how girls like her were treated. She had seen it in movies, in school halls, in the way some people talked to her with pity disguised as politeness. But something about that moment, hearing it out loud, so blunt, so careless, cracked something open that had already been holding too much. She lay back on the floor and stared at the ceiling, the quiet in the room pressing down on her like a blanket. There was no one to vent to, no one who would really understand. So she said nothing, just stared and breathed and let the weight settle. But under the silence, under the shame and the burn, something else began to stir. Small, quiet, not anger, just the very first flicker of a question. What if they were wrong? The first time someone made fun of her nose, she was 8. It was on the school playground, hot sun overhead, the kind of day where kids move fast and words move faster. A boy pointed and said it looked like someone pressed her face too hard against the window. The other kids laughed. She didn't. But she didn't cry either. She went home that afternoon and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror, pulling at her reflection like she could somehow rearrange it. After that, it kept happening. Her lips, her skin, her hair. All the features she'd been born with, all the parts of her that mirrored the women in her family, became targets. Not always loud. Sometimes it was just a glance, a pause, a whisper that trailed off when she entered the room. Other times, it was blunt, said with the kind of cruelty that only children can master. Middle school made it worse. Girls who looked nothing like her were on posters, on magazine covers, on Instagram feeds that dictated what pretty was supposed to mean. When they posted selfies, they got fire emojis and heart eyes. When she did, it was silence. Or worse, a laughing reaction. Comments that said, brave, or who told you this was it. She learned to laugh first. To make the joke about herself before anyone else could. She called her own selfies ugly in the captions. She told people she wasn't into makeup because she didn't need to be seen. She stood in the back row of group photos, or behind a taller friend. She tilted her head just enough to disappear. Makeup became a kind of armor, eventually. Not the fun kind, not the creative expression, just enough concealer to hide the dark spots, just enough lip gloss to look like she tried. She watched tutorials in secret, practiced contouring late at night. She didn't want to change her face. She just wanted it to hurt less. Teachers said she was well-spoken. They used the word articulate like it was a compliment she should be grateful for, as if they didn't expect clarity from someone like her, as if her voice was an accident that turned out better than it should have. She smiled and said thank you, but inside she added it to the list. The invisible file of every word, every tone, every little moment that reminded her she was never quite what the world was asking for. She stopped looking in mirrors for a while, not because she hated herself, but because she didn't want to see someone trying so hard to disappear. But underneath all that hiding, all that self-editing, something waited. It flickered in the quiet moments. When she caught her own reflection without flinching. When she looked at her mother's photo and saw the same nose, the same strong features. When she passed a window and thought, for just a second, that she looked like someone worth looking at. That spark never left. It just waited for her to stop apologizing. The cafe wasn't fancy. A little corner place with chipped mugs and mismatched chairs. She liked it for the quiet, for the fact that no one stared. That day she was hunched over a notebook, headphones in, hair pulled back, lost in her thoughts. She wore no makeup, no filters, just a hoodie and soft light from the window. He approached slowly, camera slung over one shoulder, notebook in the other. He wasn't creepy, just curious. Said he was a street photographer working on a series about real beauty. Asked if she'd ever modeled. She laughed. The kind of laugh that's more defense than amusement. She told him no, absolutely not. He smiled and said, good. That's exactly why I'm asking. She hesitated, then said yes. The shoot was the next day. No fancy setup, just her, him, a rooftop, and late afternoon sun. He gave little direction, just told her to be. Stand there, look left, sit in the light. Think of nothing. Think of everything. She moved awkwardly at first, unsure what to do with her hands, her face, her presence, but he never rushed, never asked her to perform. He just watched for the truth. When he sent her the photos, she didn't open them right away. Her thumb hovered over the email like it held something dangerous. She had spent so many years seeing herself in fragments. As a joke, a before picture, a placeholder. She wasn't ready to see another version. But eventually, curiosity won. She opened the folder on her laptop and sat still for a long time. There she was. Not edited, not airbrushed, not contorted to fit someone else's taste. Just her. Strong lines, wide eyes, full lips. Dark skin glowing in sunlight like it was the first time anyone had ever captured it with care. The angles were unexpected, some harsh, some soft, but none of them asked her to shrink. She stared until her eyes blurred. Not because she didn't believe it, but because something inside her was shifting too fast to name. It wasn't about validation. It wasn't about being pretty. It was about finally seeing herself outside the story others had written for her. The photos made their way online. The photographer posted a few, called her a muse. The comments flooded in, people asking who she was, saying things like arresting and unforgettable and the kind of face you don't forget. She read them all but didn't reply. She didn't need to. What mattered was the mirror, how it felt the next morning to look at herself and not flinch, to see the same features she had tried to hide now framed in gold. She didn't decide to model. She decided to exist fully. And for the first time, that was enough. The first real booking came through a DM. A small designer launching a capsule collection wanted her for the lookbook. She didn't have an agent yet. No portfolio beyond those first rooftop photos, but something about her presence drew them in. She said yes. The clothes were handmade, the lighting was harsh, and the shoot happened in a cramped studio with mismatched flooring. Still, when the photos came out, people paused. There was something in her face they couldn't scroll past. From there, it trickled in. An indie fashion show. A pop-up campaign for a skincare line that prided itself on showcasing real skin. Her phone started ringing more often. She bought a ring light, took meetings between shifts, built a website with a friend. Nothing flashy, just her face, her story, and a contact form. Every time someone asked what agency she was signed to, she said she was figuring it out. Brands were drawn to what they couldn't manufacture. Her stare wasn't rehearsed, her smile wasn't trained, she didn't give them poses, she gave them presence. She didn't walk like she was trying to be noticed. She walked like she had already been through the fire and had no reason to ask for permission anymore. And that glow, it wasn't the makeup. It wasn't the lighting. It was something deeper, something people tried to name but always missed. Her social media grew slowly. Then suddenly, someone posted a behind-the-scenes clip of her laughing during a shoot. It went viral. Then came the fan pages, edits, DMs from girls saying they had never seen anyone who looked like them on a beauty campaign. Her following jumped overnight, but she didn't chase the trend. She kept it clean, focused, real. No fake storylines, just her becoming herself in public. People who had once passed her in hallways without a glance now watched her stories religiously. Classmates who once made jokes about her hair liked her posts. One even commented, "You were always beautiful," and thought it sounded innocent. She didn't reply. She didn't block him either. She didn't have to. Her silence held more power than any call-out. The emails changed. The tone changed. Big names now. Companies with teams and schedules and budgets. A major fashion brand reached out. Their flagship campaign was launching in New York. They were searching for a face that meant something. One of their creative directors had seen her in a skincare ad and said she couldn't stop thinking about her expression. They wanted that. The email ended with a question: would she be open to appearing on a billboard in Times Square? She reread the sentence 4 times. Then again, not because she didn't believe it, but because it felt like the world had finally tilted in her direction. She answered yes without hesitation. And when she clicked send, she sat in silence for a moment, letting it land. This wasn't luck. This wasn't timing. This was the glow they had once tried to dim. Now, it lit up cities. The first message came in just after midnight. Her post had gone up only a few hours earlier, a quiet celebration shot of the billboard lit up in Times Square. She hadn't said much in the caption, just a short thank you to the team and a single emoji. Still, it spread fast. People shared it, tagged friends, called her iconic. She wasn't watching the numbers, but the message request folder was filling quickly. At the top of the list was a name she hadn't seen in years. Not a close friend, not even someone who had ever really spoken to her back then. Just someone who had laughed the loudest when others made comments. Someone who had never looked at her without smirking. The message said, "Is this really you?" Nothing more. No compliment. No apology. Just disbelief, wrapped in curiosity. Like she had somehow broken a rule they didn't know she was capable of breaking. She didn't reply. Another message came the next day. A girl from high school, the one who used to make little jabs during lunch, always followed by "just joking." This time she wrote, "Wow, who would have thought? You look amazing." With a heart emoji at the end, as if the years in between had been erased by a few kind words. She stared at that message a long time before deleting it. Not out of anger, but because it felt hollow. The kind of compliment built on surprise, not sincerity. The kind that still assumed she had started from less. More came in waves. Some said nothing. Just followed her, watched every story, liked every photo. Silent observers who had once been loud critics. Some left supportive comments under posts, careful not to say too much, maybe hoping she wouldn't remember. But she remembered. She remembered the hallway whispers, the bathroom stall laughs, the night she deleted the prom dress photos without saying a word to anyone. That pain didn't consume her anymore, but it hadn't vanished either. It lived quietly in her chest, flaring up when she least expected it. Like now, she told herself she had moved on. And mostly, she had. But something about the way these old names resurfaced with their hesitant approval reminded her of how deep those wounds had gone. How long she had spent trying not to take up space. How hard she had worked just to see herself clearly again. She turned off her notifications for the night. Made tea. Sat by the window in silence. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't looking for revenge. But she wasn't interested in rewriting history for their comfort either. Her journey wasn't about being proven beautiful to the people who once called her ugly. It was about being whole in the face of every voice that tried to break her. And even now, with her face lighting up a city that once felt too big, she knew healing wasn't linear. Some memories still flickered, but they no longer had power. She did. It went up just after sunrise. The street was already busy, taxis honking, tourists pointing, people rushing across crosswalks with coffee in hand. But for a moment, everything felt slower. Not quieter, just heavier with meaning. She stood across the street in the sea of movement, headphones in, heart steady, looking up. There it was. Her face, larger than life, lit by the soft glow of a morning sky that hadn't yet turned harsh. Her eyes stared out from the billboard with calm confidence. No forced smile, no contorted angle, just her. The same features people once told her to hide. The same skin they once called too dark. The same lips they said were too much. All of it now framed in light. Celebrated, unavoidable. People stopped, looked up, a few raised their phones. A man pointed. A teenager gasped and said she had seen her on TikTok. A little girl in a pink jacket clutched her mother's hand and whispered something while staring, wide-eyed. She didn't move at first, just stood on the edge of the crowd, unnoticed, hoodie pulled up, face half covered by her curls. Her hands were in her pockets, not from nervousness, but because she had nothing to prove. She had already done it. A group of girls walked past. One of them glanced up, then froze. She nudged her friend, who turned with a quick intake of breath. "She's beautiful," the girl said, not whispering, not hesitating, just truth. That was the moment it hit. This wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong or making anyone eat their words. That part of her story had already closed. What remained now was something deeper, something brighter. Visibility. Not for her alone, but for every girl who had ever been told to shrink. Every teenager who skipped the mirror. Every woman who lowered her voice to make others more comfortable. She was up there. And that meant someone else could be too. She pulled out her phone and took a picture, not for the feed, not for applause, just to remember, to hold on to the feeling. Her thumb hovered for a second, then she tapped send. Just one person. Her mother. No caption, just the image. Someone nearby said, "I wonder who she is." The question floated between car horns and the rumble of buses. She didn't answer. She just smiled and turned to leave, blending back into the city she now belonged to. Her face remained above them all, unbothered, unmoved. It would stay up. For weeks, her name would run in magazines. Her story would be told in interviews. But for her, the biggest win wasn't the lights. It was knowing she no longer needed anyone else's permission to be seen. The hallway smelled the same. A strange mix of floor wax and old books, familiar in a way that tugged at something deep in her chest. The walls had fresh paint, brighter than before, but the energy was still there. That quiet weight of teenage expectation. Lockers lined the corridors, some open, some dented, some still scribbled with pen marks like they were resisting being erased. She didn't tell anyone she was coming. It was a quick stop on the way to visit her aunt. No fanfare, no press, just a detour to a place that once held more power over her than anything else ever had. She passed the cafeteria, the corner where she used to eat lunch alone, and the bench near the gym where they had taken yearbook photos. It felt smaller now. Not in a literal way, but in the way that happens when you outgrow something and realize how much space you used to surrender. Her steps slowed as she neared the bathroom. The one she used to avoid. The one she had once walked into with trembling hands and hopeful eyes, only to walk out of with something broken inside her. The door creaked open, just like it used to. She stepped inside. The cracked mirror was still there, not shattered, but split just enough to distort a face if you stood in the wrong place. The tile was still chipped in the corner near the sink. One of the stalls had the same scratch marks on the door. It was as if time had moved forward without really changing anything at all. She approached the mirror slowly. Not out of fear, just respect, like visiting an old version of herself that still haunted the corners. She stood where she once stood, in a gold dress, trying to believe she was enough. Back when someone's careless words cut her down to silence. Her reflection looked back. Same eyes, same nose, same lips. But nothing about her was small anymore. Her shoulders were squared, her expression soft but unshakable. She didn't need a filter. She didn't need to be seen by anyone else to know she was real. She stared into the glass for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not the kind of smile for photos or followers or likes. Just for her. For the girl who had once stood here trying to hide her light. For the girl who thought she had to earn beauty. For the girl who believed she would never be enough in their eyes. This time, she said it out loud. "You were always beautiful." The words didn't echo. They settled. And when she turned to leave, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The girl in the mirror wasn't stuck anymore. She had made it out. And now, they would never forget her face.